Step out of the car, now. Those 6 words shattered everything. Officer Dana Whitlock thought she was in control. A decorated Portland cop with 20 years on the force, she saw a well-dressed black man driving a luxury car through a rundown part of town and assumed the worst. Seconds later, she threw a punch that would echo across the city. A punch to the jaw of the one man she should have never touched. Malcolm Hayes wasn't just anyone. He was her new boss. The chief of police. What followed was a descent into chaos. As Dana's career unraveled in real time, the internet exploded. Old complaints resurfaced, surveillance footage mysteriously appeared, an arson attack was pinned on her, and the man she hit, he stayed silent, calm, calculating, watching her collapse piece by piece. But Dana wasn't just going to take the fall, she fought back. Digging into Malcolm's past, she uncovered a web of corruption stretching back to his time in Oakland, buried scandals, bribery, manipulation, cover-ups. And when she forced a live-streamed confession, the entire world watched as power fell, and silence was finally broken. This isn't just a story about a rogue officer or a corrupt chief. It's a story about truth, what it costs to speak it, and who has the courage to do so when the world wants you to stay quiet. Watch until the very end, because what begins with a punch ends with a reckoning. And not everyone survives it. Now, before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We share powerful, meaningful stories like this every day. And drop a comment below to let us know where you're watching from. Thank you. And now let's get back to the story. Step out of the car. Now. The words sliced through the rain-soaked night like a blade. Officer Dana Whitlock stood with one hand resting on her holster, the other motioning stiffly toward the pavement. The red and blue lights of her cruiser blinked against the wet concrete, reflecting off puddles like blood and bruises. The driver didn't move. He didn't flinch. He just looked at her. From behind the wheel of a midnight black Tesla, the man's expression was unreadable. Calm. Cold. His coat, charcoal gray and tailored to perfection, wasn't something Dana was used to seeing in this part of Portland. Not at this hour, not on these streets. Is that necessary, officer? His voice was smooth. Polished. Not mocking. Not fearful either. That tone, that composed tone, needled under her skin like a splinter. You didn't signal back there, Dana snapped, her voice low and coiled. Turned without indication. That's a violation. He nodded once, as if processing a boardroom memo. I understand, but do you normally pull over Teslas in a marina parking lot for minor traffic signals, or is it just mine tonight? Dana's jaw flexed. She hated this. The way he spoke. The way he didn't stammer or scramble to appease her authority. 20 years on the force had taught her to read people fast. She dealt with her share of smug executives, wealthy tourists, and belligerent drunks. But something about this man was different. He didn't seem like he was hiding anything. He seemed like he'd already seen the playbook. Out of the car, she repeated. He sighed, then slowly unbuckled his seatbelt with the grace of a man used to moving under observation. When he opened the door, Dana noted the shine of his cufflinks. Silver. Monogrammed. Who the hell wore cufflinks at midnight? He stood tall, broader than she expected, not threatening, not hostile, but unnervingly grounded. His presence was the kind that made people straighten their posture without realizing. He was the kind of man who didn't demand respect, he carried it. Dana hated that. Hands on the trunk. He obliged, no resistance. But not submission either. Just a man following the steps like he'd read them off a form 1,000 times. She moved in behind him, her boots crunching over loose gravel. Rain ticked against her uniform like it wanted to speak. A wind swept through the empty lot, carrying the scent of fish rot and old diesel from the docks. Somewhere in the distance, a foghorn moaned. When her hand touched his back, firm, assertive, he didn't flinch, but she felt it. That subtle resistance. That steel. It was enough to set her off. She didn't think, didn't speak, just acted. Her fist flew, pure instinct, pure ego. The crack echoed across the lot as her knuckles collided with his jaw. It was a clean shot, too clean. He staggered. Not far, just enough for the blood to begin pooling at the corner of his mouth. One hand fell from the trunk, then calmly returned to its place. Dana stood there, adrenaline pounding in her ears. Her chest rose and fell. She waited for the outburst, the retaliation, the chaos she was trained to meet. But he didn't curse, didn't shout. Instead, he turned his head slightly, the blood now mixing with rain on his chin, and said, softly, evenly, "You'll regret that, officer." Not a threat, not a warning, a statement of fact. Dana's heart stuttered. She blinked. Her voice caught somewhere between rage and uncertainty. "Get back in your car," she muttered. He didn't argue. Just calmly wiped his mouth with a silk handkerchief, got in, and drove off. No tires squealing, no raised voice. The taillights faded into the mist like the ghost of a mistake. She stood in the parking lot alone, hand trembling, her badge suddenly heavier than it had ever felt before. She told herself she had done the right thing. He had provoked her. He was playing a game. Men like that, they needed to be reminded who held authority. But something gnawed at her chest. Because deep down, Dana Whitlock knew. She hadn't hit him because he was dangerous. She hit him because she felt small, and she didn't know yet just how big of a mistake she'd made. The morning after. It was barely light when Dana walked into the precinct, her hair still damp beneath her cap. The smell of burnt coffee lingered like an old fight, and the walls hummed with routine, boots scuffing linoleum, chairs dragging, paper slapping onto desks. She dropped into her usual chair and wrapped her hands around a chipped mug, the warmth biting at her bruised knuckles. She didn't even wince. She'd done worse in her career. This wasn't the first time things had gotten physical, and the guy hadn't even filed a complaint. Probably just another entitled suit who didn't want the drama. She sipped her coffee and stared at the rain slicking down the window. Behind her, voices murmured. Laughter. Shuffling papers. Nobody said a word about the night before. Nobody asked. Good. Just the way she liked it. Until her radio crackled. Whitlock, Chief's office. Now. She looked up, frowning. Chief's office? She repeated more to herself than anyone else. That didn't make sense. The chief was on leave. The interim director was some admin pencil pusher, probably calling her in for a form signature. Still, her stomach coiled with something she couldn't name. She stood, adjusted her belt, and walked. The hallway to the chief's office was lined with old photographs and commendation plaques. Dana had a few of her own up there. Community service, bravery, tactical excellence, proof that she wasn't one of the bad ones. She walked past them now without looking. At the end of the hall, the frosted glass door stood closed. The gold stenciling read, Chief of Police, Office of the Commissioner. Dana didn't knock. She never knocked. She pushed the door open and froze. The man behind the desk looked up slowly. A faint bruise colored his jaw. A tailored suit, a white shirt, calm eyes, the same calm that had stared back at her in the rain last night. Malcolm Hayes. The man from the Tesla. The man she hit. The man now sitting behind the chief's desk. Dana's lungs forgot how to work. He didn't say anything, didn't stand, just watched. Chief Hayes, I didn't know, she stammered, words tumbling out like loose gravel. I thought you were. He raised one hand, silencing her. You're on desk duty, he said. No anger, no inflection, just the quiet authority of a man who didn't need to raise his voice to control a room. Effective immediately. That was it. No reprimand, no chewing out. Just consequence. Dana blinked, tried to form another sentence, but he had already looked back down at the file on his desk, dismissing her without needing to say a word. She stood for a moment too long, then turned and left. Her boots thudded against the tile like footsteps in a funeral procession. And as she stepped back into the fluorescent-lit precinct bullpen, everything looked the same. But nothing would ever be the same again. Wait. You hit the chief? The voice was barely a whisper, but it might as well have echoed off every cinderblock wall in the precinct. Dana Whitlock didn't turn. She didn't have to. She recognized the voice. Officer Ryan Cruz, the rookie she'd trained just 6 months prior. He was leaning toward her from the next desk, eyes wide, voice pitched with disbelief. Dana's fingers curled tighter around her coffee mug. The warmth that had once soothed her bruised knuckles now felt like it was burning through her skin. I didn't know, she muttered. Ryan leaned back slowly, as if distancing himself from a crime scene. You punched him, though. She finally turned toward him, eyes sharp as glass. Watch yourself, Cruz. He raised his hands in mock surrender, but the damage had already been done. All around the room, the usual morning chaos, the chatter, the clacking of keys, the sarcastic grumbling, had thinned to a brittle silence. Cops passed her desk and glanced sideways. Some smirked, some didn't. No one made eye contact for long. Dana forced a tight smile as if nothing was wrong, but inside she felt the shift. The same walls that once made her feel armored now felt like they were closing in. By noon, it was no longer whispers. The video had surfaced, not from her dash cam, not from the precinct's body cams. A bystander's cell phone, angled across the street, grainy and dim but damning all the same. It captured the punch in brutal clarity, her hand flying forward, the sharp sound of impact, Malcolm Hayes' head snapping back, and his still, composed response. She'd seen plenty of takedown videos before. She'd even reviewed some for internal cases. But now it was her uniform, her voice, her fist, and it was everywhere. The caption alone made her stomach clench. Portland cop punches black man in luxury car. Turns out he's the new police chief. She slammed her laptop shut and stood so abruptly her chair scraped backward across the linoleum like a scream. Her pulse surged in her neck, in her fingertips, behind her eyes. The precinct felt hot, too loud, too quiet. She could feel them watching her. "Whitlock," a voice called from across the bullpen. "Captain wants a word." Of course he did. Captain Morris Lang didn't waste time with pleasantries. He stood behind his desk, arms crossed over his chest, the morning's newspaper folded beside him. She didn't need to read the headline. She'd already lived it. "You're on administrative review," he said, his voice clipped. "Effective immediately." "I've already been placed on desk duty," Dana replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Lang shook his head. "That was internal. This is external. Oversight board got involved. They want everything. Your past stops, your patrol logs, your complaint records, all of it." Dana blinked. "They're digging?" "They're not digging, Whitlock. They're excavating. Civil rights groups are on this. Press is outside the building." "I followed protocol," she snapped. "Protocol doesn't matter when there's video." His voice dropped. "And you know it." By the time she returned to her desk, someone had already cleared out her inbox. A bright yellow sticky note sat on her keyboard with a single word scribbled across it: optics. Her rookie Ryan was gone, reassigned. The other chairs around her desk were suddenly empty. Her phone didn't ring once that day, not even a wrong number. She typed up reports that no one asked her to write, eyes flicking to the door every time it opened. She felt like a case file left in the open, forgotten, but not safe. And then, just before shift change, a new email pinged in her inbox. Subject: social media monitoring notice. She clicked it. The message was short, brutal. "Your incident has been flagged by Portland Community Oversight Committee. Video link, 3.4 million views. Comments monitored, internal review in progress." She clicked the link anyway. The video was embedded at the top of the screen. The moment, the punch, the silence that followed. The comments were a wall of rage. "This is why people don't trust cops. Imagine what she does when there's no camera. Badge doesn't mean you're above the law. Fire her." Dana's hand trembled as she reached for the power button. She couldn't take it anymore. But even in the dark, the echo remained. That night, she sat in her apartment with the lights off and the curtains drawn. The only sound was the rain, endless and cold, tapping the windows like an accusation. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was her sister from out in Bend. The message was short. "Is this real? Tell me you didn't hit the chief." Dana didn't answer. What was she supposed to say? That she didn't know? That she thought he was just another arrogant man in a fancy car, giving her that look she hated? That she acted on impulse? On instinct? On power? She shut off her phone and poured herself a drink. But it didn't burn like it used to. It just sat heavy in her gut, like the truth she refused to admit. She hadn't controlled the situation. She'd lost it, and now everything else was slipping with it. Back at the precinct, someone had scrawled a phrase on the whiteboard in the break room. Not all wounds are visible. It wasn't about her. Not directly. But she couldn't shake the feeling that someone had written it for her anyway. Because Dana Whitlock was bleeding now. Not from her knuckles, not from Malcolm's response, but from the silence growing around her, louder than any siren. And somewhere deep in her bones, she could feel it beginning. The reckoning hadn't even started yet. Dana Whitlock sat alone in the precinct's break room, her sandwich untouched, a cup of stale coffee cooling beside her. The room, usually buzzing with laughter, offhanded war stories, and petty bickering, was dead silent now. She could hear the humming of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock on the far wall, every sound amplified by the absence of normalcy. No one sat beside her. No one even looked in her direction. She wasn't a person anymore. She was a headline. She opened her phone and scrolled, not through news feeds but through her own photos, trying to remember who she used to be. A picture of her in uniform next to a smiling young kid she'd talked out of joining a gang. A photo from the precinct's awards banquet, flanked by officers with beers and plaques. A blurry picture her daughter had taken on a fishing trip. She closed the gallery. None of it mattered now. Then her email dinged. She tapped it open. Subject line: Social Media Review, Officer Dana Whitlock. Attached was a formal notice from the Portland Police Oversight Committee. Her conduct was under full review. Allegations: excessive force, racially motivated bias, and prior history relevance. Her stomach turned. A knock on the break room window made her jump. It was Captain Lang, holding a manila folder, expression grim. Internal Affairs wants you again. This time the interview wasn't informal. It was in a cold room with a flickering fluorescent light and no badge on her chest. Across from her sat Lieutenant Claire Devane, Internal Affairs bulldog. No emotion, just process. "Tell me what happened that night," Devane said, flipping open the folder. "It was a standard traffic stop. Failure to signal," Dana replied. "And the driver?" She hesitated. "Malcolm Hayes." Devane didn't look up. "The chief of police. I didn't know who he was at the time, but you hit him." Dana swallowed. "He was being non-compliant." Devane raised an eyebrow. "Did he raise his voice?" "No." "Did he reach for a weapon?" "No." "Did he make any threats?" Dana's lips thinned. "No." "So you struck him because?" Silence. Devane scribbled something on her notepad and slid a document across the table. 3 names, 3 incidents, 3 complaints, all young black men, all claiming Dana had used excessive force during stops in the past 5 years. "I was cleared," Dana said. "They were shelved," Devane corrected. "Different supervisor. Never investigated." Dana's breath caught in her throat. "This is political." Devane didn't flinch. "This is procedural." Another page slid toward her. A signed affidavit from a 16-year-old named Marcus Doyle, claiming she slammed him into a wall for loitering near a gas station 3 years ago. Dana's head spun. "I don't remember him." "You don't remember the name? Or the violence?" She stood up, chest tightening. "This is a setup. You think Chief Hayes is orchestrating this?" Devane asked, voice still flat. "I think," Dana growled, "someone is trying to destroy me." That night, her apartment felt like a cage. She paced the same few steps between the kitchen and the window, over and over. The rain had started again, Portland's eternal drizzle turning the sidewalks into rivers of reflection. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her daughter, just one word: "Why?" Dana stared at the screen, her fingers trembling over the keyboard. She didn't reply. She couldn't. She didn't have an answer that would make sense. Not to her, not to anyone. The next day, the unthinkable happened. The community center in North Portland caught fire, an arson attack that gutted the facility. The building was used for youth programs, mentorship, after-school tutoring. It was a symbol of unity, and someone had linked her to it. A grainy security still was already circulating online. The image showed a woman in a hood, walking near the alley beside the center just minutes before the flames started. The outline was hers. The jacket, the gait, the street she'd parked near just 2 nights earlier, just to think, just to breathe. The photo was enough. Dana's phone exploded with messages. One from a neighbor, "You okay?" One from a former colleague, "What the hell did you do?" One from a block number, "Did you do it?" She felt like vomiting. Desperate, Dana called the only person left who hadn't abandoned her, her lawyer, Michael Kessler. He was a former cop turned attorney who normally handled DUI charges and union disputes, not alleged arson, not potential felonies tied to a national scandal. "They're framing me," she said the moment he picked up. "Karen." "No, Michael. Listen to me. This is Hayes. This is him. He's setting me up. This isn't a coincidence. First the punch, then the video, now this. It's too perfect." Michael sighed on the other end. "We need to move fast. I want to go on record, a statement, everything. I'll set it up." The next morning, she opened her inbox to another nightmare. The mayor's office had issued a public notice. The Portland Police Department is undergoing a structural integrity review in light of ongoing allegations. She wasn't named directly, but everyone knew. And worse, the public had chosen sides. And she was not on the right one. News vans parked outside her building. Protesters stood at the steps of the precinct. Someone spray-painted "Justice for Malcolm" across a squad car. Inside the department, she was radioactive. No one sat near her. No one talked to her. Even the people she had trained, protected, worked alongside for decades, gone. They had made their choice. She was no longer one of them. She was a threat to them, a liability, an open wound. That night she came home to find her front door slightly ajar. The lock had been forced, drawers pulled out, papers scattered, and on her kitchen table 4 words written in thick black ink: "Next time you burn." She stood frozen, pulse thudding in her ears. Outside, a police cruiser rolled slowly past, headlights scanning her building, watching, waiting. She didn't report it. What would she say? That the people who were supposed to protect her had become her predators? That her enemies now wore suits and uniforms? That the man she punched wasn't just the chief, he was the architect of her collapse? Dana sat down at her kitchen table, shoulders heavy, hands shaking, vision blurred with anger and fear. But she didn't cry. Not yet. She just whispered to the empty apartment, "You want to fight, Malcolm? You've got one." And this time, she wouldn't wait for someone else to save her. The motel smelled like rusted pipes and cleaning fluid, like the kind of place people didn't check into, they hid in. Dana Whitlock sat on the edge of the spring-shot bed, her service pistol lying disassembled on the nightstand beside her. The thin curtains were drawn, but not tight enough to block out the flashing news reports just outside. She watched the city from the crack in the fabric, her city, the one she'd sworn to serve for 20 years, turn its face away from her. And yet, she wasn't done. Not yet. Not by a long shot. "Michael," she said as soon as her lawyer picked up. "Dig." His voice, groggy and cautious, filtered through the line. "Into what?" "Malcolm Hayes. Everything. His past, his transfers, his days in Oakland. I don't care if it's sealed, burned, buried, or redacted. I want it." There was a long silence on the other end. "Karen." "Do not Karen me," she hissed. "You want me to lay down and die quietly? Not a chance. He's not just ruining my name. He's trying to erase my entire career. There's something there. I can feel it. This level of power play, it's not new to him." Michael sighed. "Fine, give me 48 hours. Give me 24. She didn't sleep. Not because she couldn't, but because she refused to. Instead, she replayed it all in her head. The marina, the punch, his eyes, his silence, the video, the whispers, the betrayal, the photo, the note on her kitchen table. Everything pointed to one name. And the worst part? He hadn't lifted a finger. Malcolm Hayes was burning her down without making a single public statement. He didn't need to raise his voice. He just had to plant the matches and let the world assume she lit the fire. She wasn't going to wait for his next move. This time she was going to light one of her own. The next day, Michael called her back. His voice was tight, controlled, but beneath it, urgency. "I found something." Dana sat up straighter. "Tell me." Back when Hayes was deputy chief in Oakland, there was an internal scandal. Never made the headlines, internal only. Bribery, a cover-up involving narcotics officers and a gang-connected informant. Records say it was dismissed due to insufficient evidence, but there's smoke. And wherever there's smoke, there's fire, Dana finished. "There's more," he added. "A journalist in Oakland tried to run a story back in the day, got buried, her blog disappeared. Career tanked. Name's Louise Marcato. She moved north. She's freelance now. Lives in East Portland." Dana was already putting her jacket on. They met in the back booth of a dive bar on Bay Street, the kind of place where the jukebox still took quarters and nobody asked why your hands shook. Louise Marcato was lean, sharp-eyed, and wore mistrust like armor. She flipped through the folder Dana slid across the table like a surgeon inspecting x-rays. "This all lines up," she said after a long pause. "The fake audit, the rewritten officer logs, the same budget numbers I flagged years ago. It's him." Dana leaned forward. "You publish this, you take him down." Louise looked up. "And you with him." "I'm already down." "You sure you want this?" Louise asked, her voice quieter now. "Because once it's out, there's no pulling it back." Dana lit a cigarette with a shaking hand and exhaled slowly. "I want the world to see who he really is." The next morning it happened. The headline hit the internet like a hammer to glass. Portland police chief tied to Oakland corruption scandal, suppressed records and cover-ups revealed. By noon, it was everywhere. Photos, documents, Side-by-side comparisons, internal transfers, budget reallocations, anonymous quotes from former Oakland officers. The scandal Louise had chased a decade earlier was now back from the grave, and it had a new face. Protesters outside the precinct no longer held signs with Dana's name. They now painted "Resign Hayes" across the steps of City Hall. Reporters swarmed the mayor's office. City Council issued a formal inquiry. And then, in a single sentence that made Dana's breath catch, effective immediately, Chief Malcolm Hayes has been placed on administrative leave pending an independent review. She read the line 3 times. Then a 4th. Then she laughed. Not the dry, sarcastic laugh she'd used to survive these past few weeks, but a guttural, deep sound that caught her off guard. She hadn't won. Not yet. But for the first time, the ground beneath her didn't feel like it was collapsing. For the first time, she could breathe again. That night, she called Michael. "I want my job back." He chuckled. "Give it 24 hours, they'll call you." And they did. A formal review board hearing was scheduled. Until then, Dana was instructed to remain silent. She didn't argue, let the storm churn for a while, let the truth settle. For weeks, she had been a villain. Now she was something else. A survivor, not a martyr, not a hero. Just a woman who refused to be erased. She walked through the city with her head up, no badge, no uniform, but with something heavier in her chest. A warning. Because silence may protect the powerful, but truth, once unleashed, doesn't go quietly back in the cage. The request came late at night, a blocked number. No caller ID, just one ring, and Dana Whitlock picked up. There was no greeting, just a voice she recognized instantly. "You think this is over?" Her blood chilled. "Hayes." Malcolm's voice was low, controlled, still wrapped in that infuriating calm. "You think taking me off the board is a win?" he continued. "You really don't get it. I exposed you," she said. "You're finished." He gave a slow, soft laugh. Not amused, convinced. "You poked a hole in the armor. That's all. And in doing so, you've just exposed your softest spot." A pause. Then, "Check your apartment." The line went dead. Dana didn't breathe for a full second. She was already throwing on her jacket. She ran the 4 blocks from her motel to her old apartment, breath clouding in the air, her boots hammering the sidewalk. When she reached her door, she stopped cold. The lock was broken again. She pushed it open. Drawers overturned. Books scattered. Cabinets ripped open. But it wasn't a robbery. It was surgical. They'd taken one thing. The file. The one from Kessler. Her only hard copy of Malcolm's scandal. Gone. And in its place on the kitchen table a note written in red ink. "Next time you burn." Her lungs stuttered. Her hand went to her waist, not for her badge, not for her weapon. Both were gone. She backed out of the apartment slowly. As she did, a black Portland PD cruiser rolled slowly down the street. Lights off, no siren, watching, waiting. That night, Dana checked into a new motel off the interstate. Worn carpet, lock that worked, no windows facing the street. She slept with her gun under her pillow, her back to the wall, the TV on with no sound. But the next morning, the peace shattered. Her phone buzzed violently. It was Kessler. "Call me." Now, she did. "Louise is dead." The words hit like a punch to the throat. "What?" "Her car exploded this morning. They're calling it a mechanical failure." Dana staggered. "You don't believe that?" "No, and neither should you. We were scheduled to meet today. She had more on Hayes. She said it would finish the picture." Dana pressed the phone harder to her ear, as if it would give her answers. "So what now?" "I don't know," he said quietly, "but you need to be very careful." She didn't go to ground, she didn't run. She went back to the place where it all began. The diner off 3 Street, where the coffee was always burnt and no one asked questions. Ryan Cruz was already there, sitting in a cracked vinyl booth. His hands shook as he stirred sugar into his coffee. "You okay?" he asked when she sat down across from him. She gave him a crooked smile. "Do I look okay?" He didn't answer. She leaned in. "Ryan, I need you. I need someone to vouch for me. These new statements they're pulling, old reports, complaints, they're garbage. You trained with me. You know I'm not who they say I am." Ryan didn't speak right away. He looked at the door like he expected it to fly open at any second. "You know how I operate," she pressed. "You've seen me de-escalate. You've seen me lead." He nodded slowly. "I got you." And for the first time in weeks, Dana let her shoulders relax, just slightly. "We're not going down like this," she said, her voice firm again. "We'll hit Hayes with the truth. Force a review of my suspension. I'm not letting him destroy everything I've built. Ryan nodded again, but behind his eyes was something else. Doubt. Or worse, fear. Dana didn't care. She had momentum again. The next morning she put on a suit, no badge, no weapon, but the same stance she'd used walking into courtrooms, classrooms, and dark alleyways for 2 decades. She walked into the precinct like she still belonged there. Ryan walked beside her, silent. When they reached the chief's office, she didn't knock. She never had. Inside, Malcolm Hayes sat behind the desk like he hadn't missed a beat. The bruises were gone. The calm hadn't faded. He looked up. No surprise. "Karen," he said, voice like glass. "This is a mistake." "No," she snapped. "Framing me was the mistake." She slapped her phone onto the desk. "I'm recording this. Everything you say is going live." Malcolm smiled. "You think that scares me?" She stepped closer. "Confess," she said. "Say what you did, right here, right now." Malcolm stood, calm, cold, steady. "I set you up," he said. "I made the call. The fire, the file, the paint on your locker, every move you made, I was already 5 steps ahead." Dana didn't blink. The red light on her phone was still blinking. Across the city, people were already watching. But as she exhaled, Ryan Cruz moved. He pulled something from his pocket, a recorder, and hit play. Dana's voice echoed through the office. "These people think they own this damn city. They need to learn their place." It was her voice, her tone. She staggered. "Ryan?" He didn't look at her. "I had to," he said, eyes down, "for the department, for my career." Malcolm didn't move. He didn't gloat. He didn't need to. Dana turned and walked out, her hands shaking so violently she couldn't feel the door handle. Back in her car, she screamed. Loud, hoarse, primal. Then came the silence. Not from outside, but from within, because the last piece of trust she had left had just shattered. The first thing Dana noticed wasn't the smoke. It was the sound. A slow, pulsing hum of sirens, not blaring, just lingering. The kind that stick to the back of your neck and whisper, "Something's already burning." She was on her way home from the precinct, heart still bruising from Ryan's betrayal when she saw it. Thick, black smoke rising just beyond the freeway overpass, curling up into the gray Portland sky like an omen. Her phone buzzed. One text, then another. Then a third, from a blocked number. "Did you do it?" She pulled over fast. Her eyes scanned the street as her phone lit up again with a news alert. Community Center in South Portland engulfed in flames, arson suspected. A few lines down, officials reviewing footage that may place former Officer Dana Whitlock near the scene. Dana didn't have to scroll. The still frame had already hit social media. Low light, grainy, but it was her jacket, her posture. Her. She remembered walking that alley, parking there 2 nights ago just to clear her head, just to breathe. And now they had it framed as proof. Another match lit, another noose tightening. She called Ryan, straight to voicemail. She didn't bother trying again. Instead, she drove not home, not to Kessler's office, but to the only place where the chaos hadn't followed her yet, the diner off 3 Yard Street. Same booth, same coffee, same cracked formica. She didn't order anything, just sat in the dim light and stared at the television mounted over the counter. The flames from the fire were already on loop. A reporter's voice droned over the footage, sterile and cold. "Sources confirm the woman seen in this surveillance image is Dana Whitlock, the officer at the center of the ongoing controversy involving now suspended Chief Malcolm Hayes." The trap was tightening. She was being turned into a symbol, not of redemption, but of destruction. She left the diner without paying. No one stopped her. No one even looked at her. By the time she got back to her apartment, 2 news vans were idling at the curb. A reporter in a perfectly ironed trench coat raised a mic as she passed. "Officer Whitlock, were you near the community center the night it burned? Is this retaliation against Chief Hayes? Did you start the fire?" She didn't answer. She just walked upstairs, locked the door behind her, and sat in the dark. And laughed. Not because any of it was funny, but because it had gone so far beyond absurd, there was nothing left but the sound of unraveling. This wasn't just a suspension. This wasn't justice. It was sabotage, carefully engineered, ruthlessly timed. And she had no way to stop it. The next morning she met Kessler in his wood-paneled office that always smelled like stale cigars and desperation. He didn't even greet her. He just slapped a folder onto the desk. "We got the footage." Dana's breath caught. "It doesn't show you at the fire," Kessler continued. "You're seen walking down the alley, But you left minutes before the flames started. The timestamp clears you. It'll help. She exhaled. But it won't erase anything, will it? Kessler shook his head. No, because the seed's already been planted, and most people don't wait around for corrections. They've made up their minds. Dana nodded slowly. The fire wasn't about destruction. It was about optics. Symbolism. They'd painted her as a rogue cop, then a liar, and now a domestic threat. They weren't just tearing down her credibility. They were laying the foundation to bury her under it. That night, she walked home through the drizzle, hood up, eyes scanning every car that passed, and that's when she saw it. His car. Malcolm Hayes' silver SUV, parked across the street, engine off, lights off. But inside, she caught it, a flicker of movement. He was watching her. Not hiding, not even pretending. Just watching. She stopped on the sidewalk and stared through the windshield. He didn't move, he didn't speak, he didn't need to. The message was clear. He wasn't finished. And now, she wasn't sure he ever would be. At home, she didn't turn on the lights. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall, her service pistol in her lap, her mind spinning. She wasn't just being silenced, she was being erased. Every piece of her legacy, every good decision, every life saved. Gone. Rewritten. She remembered once believing that truth would save her. But in this world, truth without power was just a whisper in a hurricane. She stood, walked to the bathroom, stared into the mirror. Same jawline, same posture, but she didn't recognize the woman staring back. That woman had once carried a badge. That woman had once believed in justice. Now she was just someone trying to survive the story they were writing for her. She stared into the glass and whispered, "You picked the wrong woman to bury." She didn't sleep. Couldn't. Not after seeing Hayes watching her from across the street. His SUV parked like a shadow with headlights off and secrets behind the glass. It wasn't intimidation anymore. It was ownership. He wasn't just trying to silence her. He believed he already had. But Dana Whitlock had been a lot of things in her life. Cop, trainer, mother, mistake maker. But she had never been someone's victim. Not without a fight. By 7 a.m. she was back in Kessler's office, files and folders spread across the desk like a war map. Her hands moved fast, flipping pages, cross-referencing statements, timelines, donor names, campaign transfers, anything Hayes had touched since Oakland. "I want everything," she said. "Not the sanitized record. I want the buried one. The one that never saw sunlight." Kessler blinked. "You're not backing down." Dana stared at him. "He's trying to burn my name off the earth." "I'm not going to wait until the flames get to my daughter." Kessler nodded once and picked up the phone. Within hours, a name surfaced. Felix Arnett, retired sergeant from Oakland PD, worked under Hayes during the bribery audit years ago, went on disability after a suspicious training accident, had since vanished into rural Oregon. Dana made a call, 2 actually, one to Kessler. The second to a freelance reporter Hayes had tried to blacklist. Luis Mercado, brother of Louise, the journalist who'd been killed in the explosion. Luis didn't flinch when she asked to meet. He just said, "Bay Street, tonight, and bring proof." She wore black jeans, boots, and an old leather jacket. No uniform, no badge, just anger, and a folder. Luis was already seated when she arrived at the dive bar. Dark hoodie, eyes darting, fingers tapping a glass of water like a beat he couldn't turn off. She slid the file across the table. Hayes donor connections, old contract records, payoffs hidden through dummy security firms, photographs, scanned memos with his initials circled in red. Luis flipped through it like he'd been waiting his whole life to see these pages. "It's all real?" he asked quietly. "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't." Luis looked up, eyes sharp now, focused. "You sure you want this out there?" he asked. "Once it's out, it's blood in the water." Dana didn't blink. "Good. Let him drown." The story dropped the next morning. A bomb. New allegations link suspended police chief Malcolm Hayes to decade-old corruption in Oakland. Private contracts, political donations, and the disappearance of internal records raise alarming questions. The same social media engine that had once crucified Dana now turned on Hayes. They pulled clips from old press conferences where he denied wrongdoing, recycled footage of his confirmation speech in Portland. Images of him shaking hands with civic leaders and donors, now overlaid with headlines reading "fraud" and "cover-up." The tide had turned, and it wasn't subtle. By noon, City Hall issued a statement. Chief Malcolm Hayes has been placed on indefinite administrative leave, pending an independent investigation. Dana read the words in her car, parked just outside the Portland Municipal Courthouse. And for the first time since she threw that punch in the rain, she smiled. Not because the pain was gone, but because now it was shared. He was falling. Not fast, not explosively, but piece by piece, the same way he'd dismantled her. Later that afternoon, she got the call. A formal review board hearing was being assembled. Her name had shifted. No longer the disgraced officer. Now, the survivor. She didn't trust it. Not yet. But she was ready. Because even if they didn't reinstate her, even if she never wore the badge again, she'd already won something bigger. Proof. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't unstable. She had been targeted, and now the city saw it. That night, her phone buzzed. Blocked number. She answered on instinct. A beat. Then his voice. Hayes. You think this is over, he said, the smooth surgical tone as always. I've exposed you, she replied. You're done. He chuckled, not loud, just sharp enough to sting. You poked a hole in the armor, Dana, that's all. But you've exposed yourself too, your weakness, your fire, and next time, it won't be words. She bristled. What are you threatening? I'm not threatening. I'm reminding you. Check your apartment. Her stomach dropped. She ran out of Kessler's office, heart in her throat, boots slamming the wet sidewalk. When she reached her apartment, the door was wide open. Again. But this time, the file was gone. The backup, the last hard copy of Luis's research. Her laptop smashed. And on the table, in bold letters scrawled across an old case file, next time you burn. That night, Dana didn't go back to the motel. She didn't go to Kessler's. She went to a gun range outside the city limits, registered under her middle name. Fired off 50 rounds, each one tighter than the last. She wasn't preparing for revenge. She was preparing for survival. Because this wasn't about a punch anymore. It wasn't even about the badge. This was war. And Hayes had just made it personal. The city woke up different. By morning, the headlines had taken root. Hayes was bleeding credibility. City council called for a closed-door inquiry. Civil rights leaders demanded transparency. Protesters gathered outside the mayor's office, not for Dana this time, but against him. Dana Whitlock stood at the edge of it all, invisible among the crowd, hoodie up, arms crossed. She watched as a woman stepped up to a microphone and said, "This isn't about just one man. It's about the culture that protects him." For the first time, Dana didn't feel alone. She wasn't the scapegoat anymore. She was the spark. Kessler's call came at 10:17 a.m. They're trying to stall, he said. City council's trying to bury it under legalese, hoping the media cycle moves on. They're underestimating me, Dana replied, voice firm. Or they're betting you'll go too far, Kessler said. Silence. Dana looked out the motel window. The clouds rolled low over the skyline like a warning. Then let's prove them right. She sent a message to Hayes. Meet me. Alone. No security. One last chance to end this quietly. She didn't expect him to reply, but 30 minutes later she received coordinates to a city office building, downtown, basement level. After hours, he still believed he had the upper hand. Perfect. She didn't go in unarmed. A hidden camera pinned inside her jacket. Audio streaming to Kessler's secure cloud in real time. One last insurance policy. She entered through the back stairwell. Her boots silent, her breath steady. The hallway was dimly lit. The kind of place where bureaucrats forgot things and secrets got buried. She pushed open the door to the office. There he was. Malcolm Hayes. Suit pristine, posture relaxed, as if none of the fires he lit had ever touched him. Karen, he said like it was a friendly greeting. She didn't respond. She placed her phone on the table, red light blinking. I'm recording this. He chuckled. You really think that matters? She stepped closer. Say it. Say what? Say what you did. He leaned back. To you or to your career? Because there's a difference. Both, she said, voice like gravel. Hayes smiled the way men do when they think they still own the board. I set you up, he said. Dana's heart thudded once, hard. I made the call, the fire, the smear, the files on your locker, every beat, every whisper. You were dancing to my rhythm before you even realized the music started. He stood, walked around the desk, his voice dipped low. You were never hard to break. All it took was one punch. Dana didn't flinch. The red light blinked steadily. And across the city, Kessler watched from a laptop as the stream broadcast it all. Hayes kept talking, calm, cold, proud. He detailed how he coordinated the arson narrative, fed stories to quiet reporters, used Dana's past stops to paint a history of violence, even had someone trail her to plant surveillance footage of her near the youth center before the fire. "You were always going to fall," he said. "I just made it cinematic." Dana stared, not with fear, not with hatred, but with clarity, because it was done. She had what she needed. Then she said 3 words. "Say it again." Hayes smirked. "I set you up." Dana reached forward and shut off the recording. Then she stepped back and let herself breathe for the first time in weeks. She walked out of that building like a storm that had just passed. Didn't look over her shoulder, didn't need to. She knew what would follow. The video hit the internet before sunrise. The title was simple: Chief Hayes confesses to framing suspended officer Dana Whitlock live. The footage wasn't shaky, it wasn't speculative, it was clean, clear, uncut. By 6 a.m., it had over 3 million views. By 8 a.m., Malcolm Hayes resigned from every office he held: police chief, advisory boards, community grants, political committees. Gone, erased, just like he'd tried to do to her. But Dana, she wasn't free yet, because justice doesn't come without blood. And Hayes had one last hand to play. That morning, Dana was found slumped in an alley, a bullet through her shoulder, her phone shattered beside her. The confession had already streamed. The truth was already viral. But the cost? It came in pain. She woke up in a hospital bed, arm-wrapped, chest-tight, IVs pumping warmth into frozen veins. Her wrist was handcuffed to the bed rail, because even heroes don't walk away clean. The ceiling above her bed was off-white, speckled with tiny cracks and dust like it had been aging quietly for years. The fluorescent lights buzzed, and the smell of antiseptic clung to the air like guilt. Dana Whitlock blinked slowly, her mouth dry, her shoulder throbbing like it held a pulse of its own. But the pain wasn't the worst part. It was the handcuff around her left wrist, chained to the rail of the hospital bed. They'd kept her alive, just long enough to charge her. The officer at the door didn't speak. He didn't have to. The press already had. Former officer involved in framing scandal hospitalized, now under arrest for kidnapping and threats. Hero or menace? The complicated fall of Dana Whitlock. She wasn't the villain anymore, but she wasn't the hero either. She was something in between, a survivor still under suspicion. Later that morning, a nurse whispered, "You're trending again," before quickly adjusting Dana's IV and pretending not to make eye contact. Outside, news vans had lined up like vultures. The video of Hayes' confession had gone international. Pundits dissected every word. "I set you up. I made the call. Every move you made, I was already 5 steps ahead." Some called it the biggest internal scandal in Oregon law enforcement history. Others called it vigilante justice. Most agreed on one thing: Dana Whitlock didn't go down quietly. By noon, she was wheeled into a backroom courthouse, her shoulders still bandaged, her wrists now cuffed in front of her. No press allowed. Just a hushed courtroom, pale gray walls, and a judge with tired eyes who looked like he'd seen too many broken systems and too few clean endings. Her charges were read aloud: kidnapping, brandishing a weapon, reckless endangerment, assault, conduct unbecoming Okar. She didn't flinch. When the judge asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Dana didn't deliver a speech. She didn't beg. She just said one line: "I did what I had to do, and I don't regret a damn thing." The courtroom fell silent. Then the judge, after a long pause, leaned back and sighed. His voice was low, even. "I'm sentencing you to time served, 5 years probation. You'll receive no reinstatement, no compensation, no badge, but also no prison." It felt like mercy and warning. All in one. Kessler walked her out through a back entrance, ducking the reporters. Her sister Ellen waited in the car, tears welling up but unshed. No words were exchanged as Dana climbed into the passenger seat. The ride to Ellen's house just outside Portland was quiet, the hum of the tires like white noise against Dana's racing thoughts. That night, Dana collapsed into a real bed for the first time in weeks. Clean sheets, no cameras, no shadows outside the window. She slept for 17 hours straight. When she woke up, the world hadn't ended. But it had changed. And so had she. Still, peace didn't come easily. Every room she walked into, she scanned like she was back on patrol. She still flinched at loud knocks, still reached for a holster that wasn't there. Her shoulder ached when it rained. Her chest tightened when someone said her name a little too loudly. She wasn't a cop anymore, she wasn't a headline, but she wasn't free either. Not yet. 2 months later, Dana found work doing private security at a quiet shipping warehouse on the Columbia River. Night shift, no uniform, no questions, just keys, a flashlight, and solitude. Sometimes she'd sit out back on an overturned milk crate and watch the moonlight ripple across the water, wondering how the hell she got from there to here. She still hadn't seen her daughter. Still hadn't found the words. Because how do you explain that you were willing to destroy yourself to prove you weren't the monster they painted you to be? How do you tell someone you gave everything to stop a man from doing what you almost became? Then one night, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She hesitated, then opened the message. Just one image. The newly repainted precinct wall, the one someone once scrawled racist pig across. Now it bore a mural. Faces of change, shadows of pain, and in the bottom corner, tucked beneath it all, a silhouette. Her silhouette. No name, no badge, just a figure standing, watching. Someone had turned her story into a symbol. Dana didn't cry, but her hands shook. Later that week, she attended a community meeting in a church basement near the South End. She didn't speak, just sat in the back, listening to residents talk about trust, safety, and what it meant to feel seen by the people who claimed to serve them. One woman stood and said something Dana would never forget. It's not that we don't want police. We just want the ones who tell the truth, even when it hurts. Dana didn't stand, didn't raise her hand. She just nodded, because that was the line, that was the wound, truth. She'd buried it under ego and armor for years, but once it broke free, it cut through everything, including her. On the way home, an older man was sweeping the sidewalk outside the church. He didn't look up when he said, "You were her, weren't you?" Dana paused. "The one who took down the chief." She didn't answer. He kept sweeping, then said softly, "Don't disappear. We still need you." She walked to the car in silence, but she didn't feel invisible anymore, didn't feel erased. She wasn't a cop. She wasn't a criminal. She wasn't a martyr. She was a survivor, with scars the whole world had watched form in real time. And for the first time in years, Dana Whitlock wasn't afraid of what came next. Portland moved on. It always did. Another election, another scandal, another headline louder than the last. Malcolm Hayes faded from the public eye like a stain washed in silence. No criminal trial, no perp walk, just a resignation and a vague statement from the city. Administrative oversight in a time of transition. They'd swept it under the rug. But Dana knew what was underneath. And so did the people who mattered. Her name wasn't restored, her badge wasn't returned. There was no medal, no handshake, no parade, but there were whispers, nods, side glances that no longer carried judgment, but understanding. A quiet acknowledgement that she had done what no one else dared. She had burned the veil and stood in the ash. She kept working nights at the Riverside warehouse, the hum of cargo trucks and gulls her new rhythm. No sirens, no radios, no backstabbing partners, just silence. And that silence, for the first time in her life, it felt earned. Not lonely. Sacred. Every so often someone would stop her on the street. Never the people you'd expect. An old woman outside the bodega, clutching a paper bag. A young man with his hood up, eyes careful. A grocery store clerk who passed her a note instead of speaking. Each one said it differently, but the meaning was always the same. I saw what they did to you, and what you did back. Thank you. But the person she still hadn't heard from? Her daughter. 3 months passed before she finally got a text. Just one sentence. I'm not ready yet, but I see you now. Dana read it in the dark, sitting on the hood of her car, the Columbia River still in motion beside her. She smiled, not because it fixed anything, but because it meant the door wasn't closed. And for Dana Whitlock, that was enough. In time, she returned to that church basement, where the community still gathered to talk safety, to grieve injustice, to dream out loud. This time she sat near the front, not to speak, just to listen, to bear witness to the very people she once thought she was protecting, but now understood she was also failing. It wasn't about proving herself anymore. It was about presence. And when one woman asked, "What does justice look like to you?" Dana didn't raise her hand, but inside, she answered, "It looks like finally being honest, even if it costs you everything." One rainy evening, she passed a street mural on her way home, the same one with her silhouette, Only now, someone had added a small line of spray paint beneath it. Not loud, not bold, just enough to read, "She told the truth when it hurt." Dana touched her shoulder, the one that still ached when it stormed, and smiled. She wasn't a cop anymore. She wasn't their puppet, and she sure as hell wasn't their scapegoat. She was a woman who walked through fire, and when the system told her to stay silent, she roared instead. And in that roaring, she reminded a city that justice doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it bleeds for the truth. Dana's story isn't just about corruption. It's not just about a crooked man in a powerful seat or a system rigged to silence dissent. It's about what happens when pride blinds us, when silence becomes a weapon, and when the truth arrives too late to save the innocent, but just in time to free the broken. She was no hero. Not in the traditional sense. She was flawed, angry, messy, but she stood up anyway, and that matters more. Because in a world that forgets too quickly and forgives too slowly, integrity is a quiet thing. It doesn't shout, it doesn't trend, but it endures. And in that endurance lives hope for all of us. If Dana's story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful narratives that honor truth, justice, and the real human cost of doing what's right. And tell us in the comments, have you ever had to speak up, even when no one was listening? We want to hear your voice, because your story matters too.